Hey guys, welcome back to another deep dive with VR Roundtable. This is Steve, and let's talk about cost. We have now surpassed the 1 year mark for VR, at least in terms of the Oculus Rift, and very soon here with the HTC Vive. We are at the 6 month mark with the PlayStation VR. And VR is talked about frequently within the gaming community and within the tech community in general. So what is stopping this from blowing up? What is stopping this from being talked about more? What is stopping this from being talked about and shown a little bigger in kind of the mainstream presence? Well, at least in the gaming sphere, it seems like there are several reasons that VR hasn't taken the world by fire. Resolution, the type of games, the comfort, having to wear something that isolates you. There's all sorts of reasons why people say they're not on the VR train. But another common reason, and what I really want to explore in this video, is cost. If you go to Google and you do any kind of research on VR, it probably won't take very long before you start coming across articles written by various types of websites, supposedly by people who have their pulse on the technology, and they're all indicating that VR is too expensive. Additionally, if you go to gaming message boards or anywhere where gaming and technology is discussed, it is also considered, oftentimes by many people, to be very expensive. But that can be a valid point. I am not trying to say that it's not valid by any means. But for me, where it becomes invalid or too tiresome is when you have the internet trolls. Take, for instance, a recent thread on NeoGAF. A lot of their comments just seem to be like they were angry or upset for some reason because this new technology was perhaps somehow threatening their existing gaming that they have grown up with for all these years. Starting out on the lower end of the spectrum, you have mobile VR, most popular though, the Gear VR. The cell phone or the smartphone VR market, the Gear VR, and any product in that category is often really not considered in the conversation when you're talking about expensive VR. And I think the reason for that mostly is because the cost of the display, which is the cell phone, the smartphone that you pop into a VR headset, which is essentially just an empty clamshell with some lenses, is absorbed by the owner through their cell phone contract. Maybe they're making installments. Maybe it's hitting. That cost is hidden from them in some way. So it's really not considered expensive, and luckily though it's typically outside of the scope of the conversation when you're talking about how expensive VR is. Next up is the PlayStation VR. The core cost of the VR unit here is $399, and there is a bundle often available, but maybe not always available, that includes a pack-in of the motion controllers and a game for $499. What is needed with the VR though is a PlayStation 4 console, and luckily it is the most popular gaming console this generation, so many gamers already have this console at their disposal, so their jumping off point into VR can be as low as $399 if they were big PlayStation fans and already had the Move motion controllers prior to the PS4 generation. But for most people, they're going to have to spend $499. And even though it is a price point that is lower than the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, the experience isn't that shortchanged. A lot of people tend to think that it's ultra inferior and that you're not getting the full VR experience unless you have one of the more expensive PC counterparts. But I'm not sure that's true. And one of the big reasons is that you're able to leverage the power of Sony and their publishing and their relationship with developers to get a lot of high quality content that, even though the hardware is inferior, the software can sort of close the gap. Following that in price point is the Oculus Rift at $499, but any potential buyers of the Rift is probably going to want to go ahead and pick up the touch controllers for an additional $99, bringing the bundle to $598. And if you're really serious about having a room scale solution, then you're going to need to buy an additional third sensor for $59. The Oculus Rift recently received a price cut that knocked the headset and the touch bundle down $200, and this is a very good move by Oculus. It really gives them a price advantage over the HTC Vive, its primary competitor, and it is a compelling product with their existing software lineup, and because you have, for the most part, compatibility with Steam VR. I won't go as far as to say it's native, but Steam VR does support the Oculus Rift directly, so you do not need any third-party hack or any tools like that. You will also need a powerful PC with the headset if you do not already have one. And last but not least on the ticket is the HTC Vive. By many, this is considered the top-of-the-line consumer VR solution. It has a price point that reflects that at $799, but it comes with the best tracking solution. You get Valve's Lighthouse system, and as an owner of an HTC Vive and the other two before mentioned headsets, I agree that the tracking solution here is far superior. With both the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, you will need a powerful enough PC to drive them. Put simply, VR requires a high frame rate, ideally in the 90 frames per second range, and it requires the game to be rendered effectively twice, one for the left eye and one for the right eye. And you need a beefy PC to run that, which, if you do not already have one, will most certainly add to the cost of getting into VR. There have been some advancements made in some of the graphic card technology. NVIDIA has released some lower price point cards, but it's still several $100s. You need a high-end CPU, not the most high-end, but a moderately high-end CPU, and of course you need the rest of the PC components to support that. And if you don't have a beefy PC, it can be a rather expensive build, but at the same time, Oculus has done a good job of creating bundles and marketing out there where you can pick a headset and a Oculus ready PC together for a cheaper price. But any of these three solutions is a serious cash purchase. Make no mistake about it, it's a big deal. It's not something that most people, by far the vast majority of people, cannot do on a whim. However, in my opinion, there are a lot of gamers out there, a lot of console gamers that will have multiple consoles. Like, if you're serious and if you are the type of person that's posting on GAF and posting on Reddit and just out there and you really have your finger on the pulse of gaming and you get most of the latest releases, odds are you have put some serious cash into your hobby. You probably have a PlayStation 4, maybe a PlayStation 4 Pro. You probably have an Xbox One. You probably had a Nintendo Wii U that you recently replaced with a Nintendo Switch. Maybe you do some mobile gaming on your tablet. Maybe you have a Nintendo DS or a PlayStation Vita. Maybe you have a gaming PC as well. It's very common for a console gamer to have multiple consoles and to really have no issues supporting that. And on the flip side, kind of the opponent of console gamers, if you will, is the PC gamer, the PC master race. And while this user group probably doesn't have a long list of consoles, they take a lot of pride in their PC, and they have very expensive mice, very expensive keyboards. They try to get some of the latest graphics cards, and had in talking about the recent graphic cards, the GTX 1080 and the GTX 1080 Ti, had VR never been a thing, PC gamers would still be wanting to buy these cards. The 980 Ti, they all were still selling long before VR was a thing. So the expensive cost here is not anything new. You add to that some of the 1440p G-Sync monitors that can cost several $100s, expensive racing wheels, expensive flight controllers, expensive RAM, expensive everything. Its cost is not, again, it is not something new. So what I think is kind of happening here is that VR is this new thing. It is this new cost. It's not so much about the price of the hardware itself. And again, I am not saying it's cheap, and I'm not saying that the purchase of any VR headset isn't a big deal. But it's completely in the realm of a lot of purchases that are already common. The difference is that it's a new thing. You have to slot VR in with all of your purchases. And if you really think about it, your smartphone, your smartwatch, your Fitbit, your tablet, your laptop, your your Amazon Echo devices or your AirPlay devices all throughout your house, if you have any, your car stereo, all the tech that comes in cars nowadays. All of that stuff is very expensive. If you're getting a new cell phone every 2 years, that is costing you $800. You're either paying it through a contract or you're paying cash for it, but it is costing you. And if you accept that, and you accept that cost is okay because those products bring a certain quality to your life, something that you value, then the idea that VR can also bring that value, the cost isn't too expensive. And that's all I'm proposing here. I'm not saying, again, for probably the third time, that the cost isn't significant. What I'm saying is that VR belongs in that list of laundry devices that you're already paying a lot of money for. Quality devices. There's make no mistake about it. These are quality devices, and VR belongs in that list. I think VR is bringing something new enough to the table that it belongs in that list. And I'm excited to look forward to buying new headsets, just like I get excited when I get a new cell phone or whatever. So is VR expensive? Yes. Is the cost too high? Probably not. And I do completely expect the cost to come down to some degree, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of opportunity to increase resolution, to increase comfort, to add built-in wireless, to do all sorts of things that we want our VR headsets to do. So I think the cost is going to remain relatively elevated. Because we'll be getting new technology as VR continues to grow. And if you look at tablets and smartphones and gaming consoles, their costs remain relatively level. Now, as you move from product to product and from generation to generation, you get improvements. So, your Xbox One cost around the same price as your Xbox 360 did, but you got more. The Xbox One was a better, piece of hardware than the Xbox 360 was. So I kind of expect VR to follow that model. It's not going to become a $150 PlayStation peripheral. It's going to remain a significant purchase, but it should get better as time goes on. And that will end this edition of Deep Dives with VR Roundtable. This is Steve. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, and if Facebook is your thing, make sure you like us there. Of course, you're already seeing this on YouTube, so if you haven't, hit subscribe below, and we will take your questions and comments at vrroundtable@gmail.com. Until next time, later.